Ali's Birth is the 25th and final episode of the 5th season of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by Zaks, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. And it's beautiful. It's a really lovely episode. In general, I don't care for episodes that primarily focus on flashbacks, but this one works really, really well. It starts off with Ray and Ali at a father-daughter dance, and he asks her how old she is now, and she says 9, and then it launches into the flashback. And this takes us to when Ray and Debra were trying to have a baby, and initially it seemed like Ray didn't want kids anymore, but it turns out that actually he was just concerned that it hadn't already happened yet. They'd only been trying for 3 months, which is not a tremendous amount of time. And once Debra explained that 3 months wasn't very long, he started to feel a bit better about this. We then cut to the next scene, and Marie comes over to their apartment, and Marie guesses that Debra's pregnant. She only found out that day. She hasn't even told Ray, but Marie knew. And then Frank and Robert come in. Robert looks a little different, and eventually Ray comes home and they tell Ray, and it's a sweet moment. We then cut to 9 months later, or however many months later after she found out, and Debra's heavily pregnant, and she's at Marie and Frank's house, and then her waters break, and Frank does something that's funny but very, very sweet, because Debra obviously wants to go to the hospital, and she wants to get out of there before Marie finds out, because she doesn't want Marie in the delivery room. So she pretends that she's going off for a walk with Ray and Robert. Obviously, Robert's going to drive the police car and get them there a bit more quickly. And Marie wants to go with them. Marie wants to go for a walk. How can they say no? Well, actually, Frank says no. Frank said that the kids can go for a walk and they can have some alone time. And we have this lovely moment where Frank and Marie are sitting close to each other, and it was very sweet, and Frank did a really lovely thing. And we're near the end of the episode. It's very, very quick, but it never felt rushed. Not a lot happens, but time does pass by really quickly, which I think is a good sign. And Ali is born. And I will say it might have been a little bit nicer if we'd maybe got to the birth a little bit more quickly and then spent some more time with her first few hours and how different characters responded to her when she was first born. I think for me, that would have been more interesting than having that initial scene with Debra and Ray and that initial flashback. I think starting off either with Debra going into labour or with Ali being born and then fleshing it out from there, I think would have just been a little bit more moving to see what Ali's first few hours were like, whereas we only get a tiny, tiny snapshot of that. And then right at the end of the episode, we're back at the father-daughter dance, and this was... Well, it got really emotional. Ray and Ali were having a nice dance, and then it switches to a slow song. And Ali says, "It's okay, I know you don't like the slow songs," but Ray said, "No, it's okay." And they start dancing to the slow song and getting a little emotional. And as they're dancing, he remarks that it's going fast enough. And of course, it would seem to Ali that he just meant the song was fast enough. But of course, he's referring to the passage of time and how Ali's growing up really quickly. And that's, again, partly why I think it would have been a little bit more interesting if we'd focused less on the months before Ali's birth and more on initially after her birth in those first few hours or first few days and what it was like becoming new parents and getting to know little baby Ali. I think it would have been a little bit more emotional and a little bit more meaningful. That's not to say that what we got wasn't good, because it worked well. I just think it would have been a stronger experience had they maybe shifted focus. But that being said, it was still really emotional. It was still really, really moving. And ultimately, Ali's birth is a really nice way to end season 5 of Everybody Loves Raymond. Personal highlights, well, I think there are 2. Frank saying that he and Marie can have some alone time, so Debra can go and have her baby in peace, was very sweet and funny. And obviously Ray right at the end there, slow dancing with Ali. It was really beautiful. So yeah, I think there's room for improvement based on what I think would have been more moving and more emotional. But it still worked. It still delivered. And ultimately, Ali's birth is a great episode of Everybody Loves Raymond and a brilliant way to end season 5.